evil empire behind the curtain, Iron Curtain, and so on. That being said, I think the fact that these countries have shared over 70 years of a common political culture, have a similar outlook on things, makes them closer, makes them easier to understand. The Russians makes them easier to manipulate and understand the situation, which is something that we in the West might have trouble in terms of infiltrating, in terms of having more influential or long-term impact on it. In this case, by the way, I always think and believe that the EU or European countries have yield better results, mostly because of the fact that geographically they're closer, historically they have been closer, and they try to include Russia. They don't have the superpower sort of approach of things. In terms of what Russia's thinking and the way they're looking, I think to a large extent, in the case of Armenia, I don't think they were very much heavily involved in it. They didn't think that anyone would make a difference. Of course, better the devil we know kind of an approach. Sarkisyan was tested. He was pro-Russian, at least in rhetoric and in terms of action in the last 4 or 5 years. But at the same time, the fact that Petrosyan was basically switching sides, if you want to put it roughly, and not becoming an advocate of the West to more pro-Russian or at least not anti-Russian approach. I think that made Russians more saying that, you settle this on your own. But I don't think they would have any kind of an influence. I don't think there was a significant foreign influence on the election, be that from Russia or from the West. Whatever they claim, whatever the Sarkisyan claimed that this was a colorful revolution in the making, or some people would argue, this was Russia's choice in supporting Sarkisyan. I don't think that's true. In terms of the question about where do other conflicts stand, if I got that from what happened. Immediately after the independence of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, when Russia recognized their independence, Russia also made a statement saying that this is not going to be the norm. So, those of you, especially in Nagorno-Karabakh, don't get too excited. We're not going to recognize Nagorno-Karabakh's independence. But at the same time, they used South Ossetia and Abkhazia in order to put pressure on Azerbaijan, saying that we could recognize. But at the same time, I think the recognition of South Ossetia and Abkhazia was more of a reaction to what happened with Kosovo, rather than with anything in the region, rather than Chechnya or Dagestan. Because the same argument that the Russians used, they said they were very much against Kosovo's recognition as an independent country, and then when they did recognize South Ossetia and Abkhazia, they said this is nothing different than Kosovo. But they didn't bring Chechnya, Dagestan, or Nagorno-Karabakh. I think the Russians Russian foreign policy is very aware of that. They know that they cannot have a single standard, one standard in terms of what applies to all. That's why they use double standards. That's why we see double standards in foreign policy in general. And they made that clear, that our recognition of these countries and our support of theirs is not a support, sort of an absolute support of any separatist republic. Rather, this was an isolated case, Georgia, and this was a lesson that we wanted to teach to Georgia, and no one else get excited that we're going to recognize it.
Let me follow up on that.
Sure.
Many people think Russia made a major miscalculation in recognizing South Ossetia and Abkhazia because of the situation in Russia's northern Caucasus. And already in the past 3 months since the war, there's increasing sort of unrest and violence in the northern Caucasus, in Russia. Increasing talk of independence and sort of unification of North Ossetia and South Ossetia. So I've heard a lot of talk from Russians coming to Washington, visiting from Moscow, saying that there's kind of regret in that way. Yes, the earlier precedent was Kosovo, saying that you did it, we can do it, but not fully thinking through the ramifications it was going to have in Russia's own northern Caucasus. And no matter how many times they publicly say, sort of, that's it, and this doesn't matter for anybody else, that's not how the people of the northern Caucasus feel, and they have rather opened up Pandora's box. A lot of people are talking about how Russia is going to have to give more economic aid to northern Caucasus, and that Chechnya will be #1, essentially trying to buy all these people off from demanding that they also get some sort of independence. And at the time of this global financial crisis, which is hitting Russia, it's going to be tough if they've got to spend, give more of a smaller pie to the powers that be in the Northern Caucasus. So that's really something to watch, what happens there. On Nagorno-Karabakh, the conflict in Georgia, so far at least, has made people become more restrained and said, look, we can't have a war here like they did there. There's got to be a peaceful resolution to this. The President Medvedev hosted President Sargsyan and Aliyev in Moscow a few weeks ago. The key thing is to keep it peaceful and not to reopen the war. My understanding right now is that that's the framework everybody's on. That sort of the lesson was we don't want that. We have to be very careful. And the Minsk group mediators, Russia, the U.S. and France, remain involved in helping keep it peaceful and move toward a peace agreement. So so right now the effects are sort of quite different in the Northern Caucasus versus Nagorno-Karabakh. So let me give it to Professor Kojim to answer the questions that were addressed to you.
I'll just speak very briefly. The question was raised about over 70 people still in prison in Armenia. I don't have detailed information of diplomatic communications here, but suffice it to say, I'm quite certain that the United States government and European governments raise this question frequently and persistently.
We have time for one final question, if anyone has one. Yes.
May I just have a comment?
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Ron Taylor from Azerbaijan Embassy. I have some comments to Mr. Kojim's statements. First of all, you mentioned the Gabala radar station as a Russian base, military base. Gabala radar station is not a Russian military base. It's the asset of Azerbaijani government or Azerbaijani state, and it has been given to Russia as a rent on the base of mutual agreement between two countries, and it has been given to Russia as a rent, and they're paying actually for this rent. So unlike other former Soviet unions, we don't have neither Russian nor another foreign country military base in our resort. Like Armenia, to the best of my knowledge, has some Russian troops in its resort. And the second one is, you said that Armenia is doing better in democracy fields by comparing Azerbaijan and Georgia. We call it consistent better. But I can't, remember any other elections in those three countries in which 8 civilians have been killed and hundreds of persons demonstrated arrested. And you mentioned that 70 of them are still in arrest. I cannot notice better development, but there are developments in both countries from my perspective that they are negative or plus, they are the same, on the same level. And I cannot just, I disagree with that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Either of you want to give any final comments or leave it as it is? All right. Well,
Just to thank you to the Coast Guard, Dr. Harris.
my pleasure. And thank you all for coming.